The return of Lucasfilm Games was one of the biggest video game surprises of 2021, and so was how fast it worked. Several Star Wars video game projects have been either announced or rumored since then, with the KOTOR remake and Quantic Dream's Star Wars Eclipse both falling into the former category. All fans have seen of either, but more specifically the latter, is a cinematic trailer. This isn't all too uncommon, especially for games early in their development cycles. However, it may not be the best news for Star Wars Eclipse. It seems the game has already encountered serious development issues that may very well impact it in the long run. Apparently, Star Wars Eclipse originally started off as an MMORPG codenamed Project Karma, but was rejected by Sony for Detroit Become Human. These MMORPG assets would eventually be repurposed and pitched as a new Star Wars game. Quantic Dream's engine is supposedly struggling with Star Wars Eclipse, as it was only designed for confined levels and limited NPCs, thus suggesting the initial scope for the game may be beyond Quantic Dream's current resource capabilities. After all, the studio is also reportedly struggling with the multiplayer aspect of Star Wars Eclipse, and, after 18 months in production and development, there is still no playable internal version of the game. Part of this seems to be a struggle for resources. After Detroit Become Human, the studio was reportedly looking to sell itself as a way to get more resources and expand the studio's size and scope, but Quantic Dream is having staffing issues due to some allegations. Part of the reason why Quantic Dream announced Star Wars Eclipse so early was an attempt to attract developers to its studio, as it found it's difficult to get talent to work on the game. Quantic Dream job listings have been regularly updated to make it seem like they were posted more recently, perhaps as a way to avoid looking like it is finding it difficult to fill the roles. In the meantime, the report also offers another possibility for why the Star Wars Eclipse trailer was dropped so early despite the game apparently being a minimum of 5 years away. It cites a source that says that this was done as an attempt by Quantic Dream to attract potential buyers. Sony and Microsoft are purchasing studios in an attempt to bolster their lineup of exclusives, and if the information is accurate, it would seem that Quantic Dream wants to be one of them. If a company was going to purchase Quantic Dream, one would think that Sony would be the most obvious candidate. After all, Sony and Quantic Dream have a long history together, with PlayStation publishing Quantic Dream's Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and Detroit Become Human as PlayStation console exclusives. Then again, Quantic Dream's workplace problems and the controversies surrounding founder David Cage may very well be playing a role in why PlayStation and no one else has purchased the studio yet. With a resurgence of the coveted Star Wars franchise in recent years seeing a plethora of new adaptations of the IP across different forms of media, the gaming sphere has been one of the most popular. One of the many Star Wars video game titles that have been announced for the near future includes Star Wars Eclipse, which is a project that promises to be massively detailed, expansive, and narrative-driven. However, a deflating byproduct of this alleged scale and depth is present within the reported release date of the game, with this Star Wars title being set for a 2027 or 2028 release date. While this gives Star Wars Eclipse a healthy development cycle befitting of how immense it promises to be, fans are understandably worried that it has perhaps been announced too early, running the risk of falling to the wayside as other projects inevitably take center stage as time passes. Not only this, such a gulf between announcement and release has historically produced a litany of other potential issues with other games in the past. Star Wars Eclipse is confirmed to be an action-adventure game, with a multiple-character branching narrative that sees the player's choices have tangible consequences within the story and game world. On top of this content-driven focus, leakers have claimed that Star Wars Eclipse will be open-world, which will provide multiplayer elements on top of a very in-depth single-player core. The game is quite unique in its setting, being set in the High Republic era of the Star Wars universe, a 200-year period considered as the golden era of the Jedi. Being an age of rapid exploration of the Outer Rim and heightened Jedi numbers and activity, the aforementioned alleged MMO elements to Star Wars Eclipse are given more credence through its setting. Given the intense lore and frequent activity associated with this era, the High Republic setting of Star Wars Eclipse has many potential stories to offer, which has built fan anticipation quite significantly. Despite the excitement that imagining a narrative-driven gameplay experience within this setting facilitates, the sobering reality of Star Wars Eclipse not releasing until 2027 or 2028 still remains. With Star Wars Eclipse reportedly already facing a slew of early development issues, many fans are wondering if the game will fall into the classic trap of being announced and garnering hype before it should have done. A very apt example of a game being announced too soon is present within a title that shares the same IP as Eclipse, namely Star Wars Battlefront 2. Despite coming out in 2017, only a year after its initial release, the close proximity in which Battlefront 2 released in comparison to Battlefront 1 seriously irked fans who were still expecting updates and post-launch care for Battlefront 1. With a slew of other Star Wars video game titles set to be released between now and the release of Star Wars Eclipse, setting a date as far away as 2028 may produce some serious hindrances down the line should any of these other titles require a strong amount of post-care attention and focus. One of the most infamous examples of a contemporary AAA title being announced too soon is present within Cyberpunk 2077, with the game initially being announced in 2012 and released in 2020. With the unique setting and sprawling dynamic world of Cyberpunk 2077 sharing the same qualities of garnering pre-launch hype as Star Wars Eclipse, the game can, and should, serve as a reminder to Quantic Dream about how damaging such a gulf in time between announcement and release can be for a highly anticipated title. With CD Projekt Red becoming increasingly confined to the set release date and releasing Cyberpunk 2077 in an extremely unfinished state, Star Wars Eclipse additionally runs the risk of having to release an unfinished project to fans who have already been waiting years for the product. In terms of a game being announced too early having an impact on its relevancy and sway within the gaming discourse, gamers have to look no further than Starfield. Initially announced alongside The Elder Scrolls VI, Starfield is an upcoming Bethesda title that has had little to no tangible updates in quite some time following its announcement. Starfield is billed as a true next-generation space exploration open-world RPG, set in the first new Bethesda universe for over 25 years, and understandably garnered a lot of hype following its 2018 announcement. However, with very little still being known about the title, and how the game will operate, despite being set for a November 2022 release date, many fans are speculating that a delay is almost inevitable. With Starfield resultantly losing hype and positive opinion amongst fans following the muted nature of its development, Star Wars Eclipse must additionally take a proactive and communication-led development cycle or risk sharing the same fate. In an interview with Games Radar, a spokesperson for the company fired back at the delay rumors, stating that the game couldn't have possibly been delayed, as it never had a release date to begin with. They went on to say that the recruitment process remained active and uninhibited, citing that the company has seen a workforce growth of 50% in 2021, and that job postings, such as the allegedly unfilled senior positions, can be deceiving. While not much is known about the game this early in its development, the footage shown thus far has been quite promising. I want Sony to pick them up. They are a very talented team that made great games over the years, and with the Sony funding, and the help from PlayStation Studios, and the relationship between Disney and Sony could really levitate the game's possibility of being great. From what we saw with the CGI trailer, this game is definitely massive in scope, and I hope it turns out well. Speaking of development hell, new insider reports indicate that the initiative continues to lose key members of the Perfect Dark core development team over creative direction. Microsoft's purchase of Rare in 2002 gave the company access to tons of IP and franchises that formerly had an exclusive home on Nintendo consoles. Over the years, fans saw the re-emergence of series like Battletoads, Killer Instinct, Banjo-Kazooie, and even a collection of classic titles in a complete package called Rare Replay. While Microsoft's first attempt at bringing Super Spy, Joanna Dark, back was largely met with mixed results. The company is giving Perfect Dark another chance with its newest first-party studio, The Initiative. Originally formed to create what Microsoft refers to as Quadruple A titles, The Initiative has had no shortage of top industry talent join its ranks. Located in Santa Monica, California, The Initiative has managed to attract developers from all over the games industry, including talent who worked for studios like Sony Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, Irrational Games, Blizzard, Insomniac, and plenty more. Fan excitement rose even more when it was revealed at the 2020 Game Awards that The Initiative is working on a Perfect Dark reboot. However, the game has since gone dark, and new reports indicate that the reason is due to turmoil within the company. Industry insiders are now saying that The Initiative has lost nearly half of its core Perfect Dark development team over the past year, including most of the senior design team. Already, the studio has lost half of its staff, including key members like game director Dan Newberger, design director Drew Murray, lead-level designer Chris O'Neill, and much more. Apparently, many of these departures seems to align with the September 2021 reveal that Crystal Dynamics was brought in as a support studio to assist on the Perfect Dark project. According to sources, Crystal Dynamics has been given more authority on the projects than initially expected, which has seemingly caused development-related issues, which include a lack of creative autonomy and slow development progress. Some have even criticized the studio's heavy top-down management style, leading to a massive slowdown on the project's momentum and progress. It's also a problem that the studio had only higher-ups, but lacked ground-level workers. So, everybody had an opinion and it led to departures. For now, project leadership, which includes studio head Daryl Gallagher, remain committed and confident in the team that continues to work on the Perfect Dark reboot. Crystal Dynamics will likely be filling in the development holes from the high turnover at The Initiative. There's also rumors circulating that Perfect Dark could be getting a soft reboot due to all of the core staff departures. Both Blake Fisher, director of narrative, and Christine Thompson, narrative lead, left The Initiative in mid-2021. William Archbell, The Initiative's technical director, as well as 7 other engineers, all left between April and August 2021. The art team also saw significant departures, with 11 teammates leaving in the past 12 months. Comments from former employees describe a frustrating top-down direction headed by The Initiative's studio head, Daryl Gallagher, and now former game director Daniel Newberger. This studio structure left employees feeling unheard on subjects including development priorities, project planning, and team staffing. All employees were described as saying Microsoft was very lenient over the lack of development progress, instead focusing on internal issues including the lack of a solid company culture. What this means for Perfect Dark isn't clear. Perfect Dark may have changed dramatically over the past 12 months, or it may not have changed at all. Bringing in Crystal Dynamics may have even led the teams to start development over. Regardless, it's unlikely that the game will be ready to be shared publicly anytime soon, and the game could be far away from release. A safe bet could be 2025. Xbox always had issues managing their first-party studios, and this follows the closure of Lionhead Studios. They don't even know what to do with Everwild, also releasing Halo Infinite half-ass with no clear roadmap, and the game is already dead, and now Perfect Dark is in trouble. The wording Quadruple A and the Xbox fans and executives hyping the studio up like this is gonna be the best even before they made an actual game really made all of this worse, and made them studio. They hired a bunch of talent, but failed to make them work as a team. That's not to say the project is theoretically in the wrong hands. Much of The Initiative's development team is made up of ex-Crystal Dynamics developers who worked on the Tomb Raider reboot series. Even though the tone of Perfect Dark, an espionage spy thriller FPS, is arguably different from Tomb Raider, a third-person action-adventure game, both succeed from epic set-pieces and complex puzzles. Crystal Dynamics has more than proven its worth with its iconic set-piece moments in the studio's last 3 Tomb Raider games. Perfect Dark's eco-sci-fi setting, alongside the stakes set by the game's reveal, likely would fit epic and intense scenes. Without any indication of Perfect Dark's development progress, it's hard to speculate exactly how detrimental this could be toward the game's development. Crystal Dynamics stepping in to the degree that it's become the lead developer of the project certainly means a development reboot is likely for Perfect Dark, and the initiative becomes a support studio. We should wait and see if the game comes to fruition, or the initiative in Perfect Dark goes into the hellhole.
It's just the beginning.
The Xbox Series X and S, Microsoft's foray into the 9th console generation, may become more frustrating for players who frequently share game clips to social media. An update to the Insider build seems to indicate the upcoming removal of a useful game DVR feature. Microsoft's Xbox Series X and S launched in late 2020 and have since gathered a decent following, with the reduction of loading times and addition of ray tracing being steps above the previous generation. However, its lacking game DVR feature is a common criticism among owners. In the latest Xbox Insider build, the ability to share game clips directly to Twitter is missing, according to a report by Windows Central. The option is no longer present in the UI, with all social media icons being sent to the mobile section of Game DVR's interface. This means that to share a game clip to Twitter, a player must first upload it to a phone, then send it from the phone. Interestingly, this change was not indicated in the Xbox Insider release notes for the update. While this removal may be frustrating for some players, Microsoft has not made any official statements or announcements on it yet. The change is currently only present in the Insider builds, meaning there is a chance it may not happen in the stable release builds at all. For now, players looking to share mini-game clips to Twitter should stay on the stable builds and wait for news from Microsoft. Players with the money and patience to spare could also consider setting up a capture card for higher quality clipping. There are several reasons why direct Twitter sharing could be removed. For now, nothing is confirmed, but it could theoretically be the first sign of an overhaul to Game DVR. Despite its usefulness, Game DVR is far from perfect, and some form of overhaul to fix its performance and stability issues could be coming up. However, until Microsoft officially confirms what is happening, the removal will just appear to users as a senseless change. For now, at least the button to open it can be remapped to something more useful if players decide to use it less because of this. Speaking of Xbox, according to a recent datamine leak, an Xbox product codenamed Keystone may be on its way, and some fans believe this could be a new console. For centuries, codenames have been used to hide certain details, with only those already in the know understanding the true meaning behind the word. Though they've primarily been used in war to keep tactical information encrypted from enemy forces, and also in trade, assassinations, heist and tech, codenames are used in a variety of industries, including the video game industry. For years, companies like PlayStation, Xbox and Nintendo have used codenames to keep their projects hidden away from the eyes of the public, but one of Xbox's most recent codenames has led to quite a bit of speculation amongst fans. Just a few days ago on March 9th, a data miner named Taro Alhonen posted an image to Twitter that may hint towards a future Xbox product. The image is a screenshot of a text document, with a highlighted line of text reading product_Xbox_Keystone. Though no additional information is provided alongside the image, this hasn't stopped Xbox fans debating what this new product could be. When the image was first posted, a good portion of fans believed that this new Xbox Keystone product could potentially be a new console. For some, this theory seems pretty likely, as the text list in the image also showed an Xbox product called Durango, with a product named Scarlet underneath it, and Keystone appearing underneath that. As longtime Xbox fans might remember, Project Durango was the name given to the Xbox One during its production, and Project Scarlet was the codename given to the Xbox Series X. With codename Keystone appearing underneath these two previous console projects, it's easy to see how some fans have become convinced that Keystone is actually Xbox's next console. Another theory that's been suggested is that codename Keystone may be a revision on the current generation of Xbox consoles, in a similar vein to the Xbox One X or S. Although the current generation already has a much cheaper option in the form of the Xbox Series S, and the Xbox Series X is obviously still powerful, having only come out just over a year ago, another Xbox Series console could be on the cards. After all, the title series does seem to inherently suggest that there's room for more console iterations in a similar style that would work alongside the current Xbox offerings. An alternative theory, and possibly the most likely, is that codename Keystone may be the rumored Xbox Cloud dongle that Microsoft has hinted at quite a bit in the past year or so. The general concept for the dongle would be that it plugs straight into a TV, and gives the user immediate access to all the games on the Xbox Game Pass service, available to stream directly to the TV without the need for a physical console. The lack of any really intensive hardware, besides perhaps a controller, would likely give Xbox fans an even cheaper, and perhaps easier way to play the latest Xbox games, something that Phil Spencer has directly expressed interest in quite recently. With Xbox putting a great deal of focus on its mobile cloud gaming platform over the last few years, with coverage on the service increasing each year, it seems likely that codename Keystone is some form of cloud streaming product. Whether that's a way to get Game Pass games on mobile devices, or a way to stream Game Pass games to a TV, it makes sense. As the Xbox Series X and S are just launched, a brand new console seems extremely unlikely, but a cloud-based platform could potentially sit right alongside the new consoles, occupying its own niche. Before we dive into the other topics, hit the like button to support the channel and grow the ecosystem, it helps a lot. Moving forward, the games for EVO 2022, one of the world's biggest fighting game championships, have been announced, and fans are excited for the August event. The rise of esports, live streaming, and professional gamers has culminated in a thriving competitive community that just seems to be rising in popularity. With millions of spectators and viewers and billions generated in revenue, video game competitions have become a major factor in the industry over the past 10 years or so. Esports has helped the pastime integrate better into popular culture and the mainstream, and created careers for young people that seemed unimaginable at the start of the century. There are a number of genres that perform particularly well in video game tournaments, from MOBAs to FPSs, but fighting games are some of the most popular. The Evolution Championship Series, otherwise known as EVO, is one of the biggest and most well-known fighting game tournaments in the world. This annual event is an open tournament that has competitors from all over the globe converge to compete and features a revolving roster of different games each year. The 2022 tournament will take place from August 5th to 7th, and now that this year's list of games has been announced, competitors and viewers have lots to look forward to. The lineup for EVO 2022 was released. In addition to the main event, the competitive tournament, EVO also serves as a kind of E3 for fighting games, giving developers and publishers the chance to show off upcoming projects or provide updates on ongoing games. Speculation is rife, and it seems likely that the recently announced Street Fighter VI will make an appearance during the proceedings, as well as the rumored Tekken 8. This list doesn't present many surprises, with classics like Street Fighter and Tekken making an appearance. Bandai Namco's 2018 title Dragon Ball FighterZ is another solid choice, with a highly praised fighting system, character roster, and visuals to recommend it. Games like Street Fighter V Champion Edition, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, Tekken 7, and Guilty Gear Strive return after already featuring in EVO 2021. More recent games have also been included in the list, like 2021's Melty Blood type Lumina. There's even the King of Fighters 15 that was just released in February 2022, which doesn't leave players that much time to hone their skills before they compete, and will be an interesting new addition. The upcoming tournament will be the first in-person EVO event since 2019, and fans will no doubt be excited to descend upon Las Vegas to celebrate the return of such a prestigious event. The tournament has gone through some tumultuous changes in recent years, with previous Twitch and Red Bull employee Rick the Hatted Teher joining EVO as a new general manager. Teher promised to bring the event to undiscovered audiences and continue to bolster the tournament's legacy for future generations. As not only the first in-person event after both the 2020 and 2021 tournaments were switched to online, this will also be the first live tournament after Sony teamed up with RTS to acquire EVO in 2021. A number of EVO co-founders moved into advisory roles, with the controversy surrounding co-founder Joey Cuellar causing major publishers like Capcom, NetherRealm, and Bandai Namco to distance themselves from the 2021 event. Now that EVO has also distanced itself from disgraced co-founder Joey Cuellar, it seems like service will resume as normal for this year's tournament. However, Nintendo has announced that its own fan-favorite fighter Super Smash Bros. Will not be making an appearance at this year's EVO, much to the disappointment of many gamers. While the reasons for this decision aren't entirely clear, I think that EVO's association with Sony has caused Nintendo to rethink its own ties with the tournament, and as usual Nintendo and Smash Bros. Fans will never say a word. There have been a number of popular fighting games that have come to be associated with EVO ever since the tournament rose to prominence in the early 2000s. Alongside iconic fighting game franchises like Tekken, Street Fighter, and Marvel vs. Capcom, Super Smash Bros. Was one of the games that came to define tournaments like EVO. Super Smash Bros. Melee originally appeared at the tournament in 2007, and since then it was featured in every EVO from 2013 to 2018 and became one of the most watched games at each event. Its absence will surely be felt, but with the list of exciting fighting game titles, EVO 2022 is still shaping up to be a memorable event. Gamers everywhere have been expressing excitement since the announcement that the long-dormant Dead Space franchise would be getting a remake of the original game. Now, a second announcement confirms that the Dead Space remake is delayed from its release window. According to a recent social media post, fans of the series can anticipate getting their hands on the title rather soon. The development time for large-scale video games can be unpredictable. Some games are ready in a matter of months, while others remain stuck in development hell for decades. Fortunately, it appears that work on the Dead Space remake is moving along quickly enough that the developers have unveiled the game's release window. A recent tweet from the verified Dead Space Twitter account confirms that the Dead Space remake is aiming for a 2023 release window. The announcement comes with a short video showcasing the words Dead Space available early 2023, as well as a spaceship floating in front of a vast planet. The video is dominated by the dark shape of the planet, while the spaceship is shown to be both terribly small and completely motionless. Most of the tension comes from this contrast as well as the flickering red light coming from the ship. Reportedly, the Dead Space remake will expand on the series' lore, exploring more of what humanity is up to in 2508. However, if this teaser is anything to go by, the atmosphere will be just as thick and tense as it was in the original. Dead Space focused on the cold metallic hulls of the Ishimura, a Planet Cracker-class mining vessel that had the marker transferred onto it, and the Dead Space remake appears to be following suit. The decision to add more elements of what life is like in the 26th century to the ship's hostile corridors could add a lot of psychological tension to the game's environment. Dead Space is considered a classic in the survival horror genre, so the upcoming Dead Space remake has a lot to live up to. Fortunately, the developers seem to be already hard at work updating existing assets and creating new ones. Recently, a new gameplay video was posted to show off some audio improvements featured in the Dead Space remake. Sound design is one of the most important elements in the horror genre, and the survival horror genre has a long history of leaning into this. The best-known example of this may be the iconic work of Akira Yamaoka, but the original Dead Space featured a chilling soundscape as well. From the distant skittering of necromorph claws to the dynamic music system, the sound of Dead Space is as important to the game's atmosphere as the visuals are. A 3-minute-long video titled Dead Space, Weapon Sound Effects Comparison, Audio Deep Dive was recently posted to the official Dead Space YouTube channel. This video focuses specifically on comparing the new and old sound effects for two of Dead Space's great weapons, the plasma cutter and the pulse rifle. Narrated by technical audio artist Mike Dominiuk, the video discusses how the Dead Space remake is trying to bring the audio quality of these beloved weapons up to modern standards. The video begins by demonstrating the original sound effects for the iconic plasma cutter, the first weapon the player receives in the franchise. Dominiuk plays the softer sounds for aiming the plasma cutter, as well as the loud hiss when it fires. Then he moves to the in-progress remake sound effects, which include a louder and more penetrating aiming noise and a completely redone firing noise. The new plasma cutter blast sounds less like a hiss and more like a choked-off metallic scream, which may be very fitting for the franchise. In the video, Dominiuk goes on to break down the new plasma cutter sound into distinct audio layers. There are far too many audio layers being played over each shot of the weapon to look at them all individually in 3 minutes, so Dominiuk focuses on 6 in particular. Each layer of sound will provide a sense of eerie sci-fi tension to the Dead Space remake. The end of the video features a similar comparison between the original and new pulse rifle sounds without the in-depth breakdown. Apparently, the new pulse rifle will sound more like an actual gun when fired. But one new feature has been described in the Dead Space remake's development footage that bears an emphasis on Isaac Clarke's limbic system responses, and proposes an emergent modernization. Motive has dubbed this feature as the Alive system, which encompasses all components of Isaac's breathing and heart rate, vocal exertions, and dialogue that are responsive to the Dead Space remake's gameplay features. Anxiety and fear are reportedly inspirations for this system and contribute to behavioral responses that Isaac will elicit while distressed. Isaac's heart rate BPM is thus affected by combat difficulty value, scripted events and jump scares, Isaac's fatigue level, Isaac's oxygen level, and Isaac's health. The Alive system effectively immerses players within these responses while staying faithful to the original Dead Space. Scripted dialogue will also be adaptive due to which state of distress Isaac experiences, normal, fatigued, and injured. Motive demonstrates these scripted dialogue changes, and the results produce dynamic voice line deliveries for each. Motive explains that some of Isaac's exertions and breathing cycles are placeholders for further improvement. Indeed, the build is fairly early, but fans will nonetheless be pleased to see what features will be included. As Isaac calms down from fatigue or injury, his breathing will gradually return to normal, and his winces of pain will be alleviated. These responses blend when experienced at the same time, and could become an auditory cue for players to comprehend what condition Isaac is in. Motive even went as far as to research the average heart and respiratory rates for Isaac's age group to fully immerse the remake systems in authenticity and extrapolate on the original Dead Space's sense of dread. Of course, the Alive system only portrays the auditory side of the Dead Space remake's many structural improvements. The Dead Space remake's Alive system is a monumental, technological overhaul that illustrates how much dedication and effort is involved in the quality of its final product. In this video we can see the footage from Dead Space, both the 2008 release and the upcoming remake, to compare how they both look side by side. While the latter is still in development, and as such the demonstration is not representative of the final product, there are some notable differences between the two, particularly when it comes to the general atmosphere and lighting, as well as the weapons. For example, Dead Space's classic plasma cutter can be seen in both versions. While the original has a slightly more hazy blue beam, the remake seems to have made it more solid. The sounds of each are also slightly different. Similar with the plasma gun. In the remake, it seems to have been given a somewhat more realistic gunshot sound, while the original has a bit more of that science fiction blast to it. One thing that many may notice is the way Isaac Clarke's arm moves when firing. Again, while the Dead Space remake is still being developed, it looks as though the studio has made it so his arm is pushed back with a lot more force when firing, in an almost exaggerated fashion. Whether this is to signify the intense power behind the shot cannot be said, but looking at each game side by side, it seems as though more animation has been put into this one aspect. Of course, one of the things that made the 2008 release so well received were the environments. As one of the most beloved horror games of the last generation, Dead Space is simply dripping with atmosphere, and while the original absolutely nailed it, the remake looks as though it's given it a number of tweaks, which includes some improvements to the lighting, which is to be expected from a modern game. In general, it looks like it's going to be an interesting remake, but take it with a pinch of salt, as it's still in the development stages at this point. My criticism with the footage I saw is that the remake footage lacks darker areas. Almost every area looks bright, and it doesn't capture the environmental horror of the original, and I hope they fix it before release. As far as graphics go, it looks good, but I'm gonna judge it after the final product releases. February saw a veritable deluge of quality video game releases, including long-awaited open-world follow-ups Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring, Dying Light 2, the PS5 version of Cyberpunk 2077 and martial arts adventure Sifu, all of which filled out the top 5 on the US and Canada and EU PS5 charts. February saw a number of highly anticipated game releases with titles like Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring, Dying Light 2, and Sifu. Unsurprisingly, these were among the top PlayStation Store downloads for last month. Elden Ring took the top spot for both PS4 and PS5 downloads in US and Canada markets, along with the leading number of downloads for its PS5 version in the EU. Sony's own Horizon Forbidden West made it the second most downloaded game in both US and Canada and EU markets. The PS5 version of Cyberpunk 2077 was also among February 2022's top downloads. Other notable top titles include FIFA 22, GTA 5, and NBA 2K22, while Fortnite was the most downloaded free-to-play game during the month. We also have the NPD data and sales date for Europe for February 2022. Elden Ring is one of the best-selling video games in the United States for 2022. Despite launching against other heavyweight titles such as Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring has managed to outsell against all competition, and according to the results analyzed and put forward by the NPD Group, Elden Ring is the best-selling video game in February in the US and Europe this year, despite releasing at the end of the month. Yet perhaps the most intriguing results from NPD's market research concern the way Elden Ring stacks up against titles that came out in the span of the last year. In its launch month, only Call of Duty Vanguard sold more copies compared to Elden Ring, and overall, Elden Ring is the fifth best-selling game in the past 12 months. Yet given that Elden Ring launched on February 25th and NPD's sales were collected up to February 26th, it means that Elden Ring accomplished all this in just a bit more over a day. Across platforms, it is the top seller for the month of February on both PC and Xbox, with the PlayStation exclusive Horizon Forbidden West outperforming it on its respective console. Given the strong word-of-mouth the game has had, backed by its popularity on Twitch, as well as its universal critical acclaim, Elden Ring is in a position to have very strong financial legs, as Elden Ring has already sold over 12 million copies in just 3 weeks, and it looks like the media overhyping this actually played a part. In Europe, the From Software games sold best on PC, representing 44% of total sales. Then it's PS5 with 40%, and then Xbox accounts for 16%. It was comfortably Europe's biggest game of February, and was number one in most major territories, with the exception of Germany, which had Pokémon Legends Arceus at number 1. The second-placed game of the month was Horizon Forbidden West. Forbidden West is the biggest PS5 launch outside of the Call of Duty franchise. 59% of Horizon's sales were on PS5, with the remainder coming on PS4, which just goes to highlight why Sony is continuing to release new games on its previous machine. It's worth noting that the PS4 version of Horizon was available for slightly less than the PS5 edition, and players were able to upgrade from PS4 to PS5 for free, which will have skewed that number. The best-selling game by single format, so only on one console, was Pokémon Legends Arceus, which was just ahead of Elden Ring on PC. This is despite Nintendo not sharing digital numbers, so Pokémon sales are purely physical. At number 5 in the charts is Dying Light 2: Stay Human. The new zombie game from Techland sold best on PS5, which accounted for 44% of sales, followed by PS4, 28%, then Xbox Series, 16%, and finally PC, 12%. Rounding off the new games is the PC game Total War Warhammer 3, which reached number 7 in the charts. Overall, 13.56 million games were sold across European markets, which is 8% up over February 2021. The physical market saw 5.9 million games sold, up 11%, and digital accounted for 7.66 million, up 6%. In terms of European console sales, Nintendo Switch was comfortably the number 1 console. PS5 and Xbox Series X continues to struggle with stock levels. As a result, for the first time, more Xbox Series consoles were sold more across Europe than PS5s. This is primarily due to the availability of the Xbox Series S model. The best-selling accessory was the DualShock 4 controller for PlayStation 4. The pad is just ahead of the PS5 DualSense at number 2, with Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons at number 3, and the Xbox Series wireless controller at number 4. The highest charting accessory that isn't a controller is the PS5 Pulse 3D headset at number 5. In the US, Switch was the best-selling hardware platform of February 2022 in both units and dollars. Xbox Series ranked second across both measures. PlayStation 5 leads video game hardware in 2022 dollar sales year-to-date, while Switch has achieved the highest unit sales in the period. Elden Ring debuted as both the best-selling game of February 2022, as well as 2022 year-to-date. Launch month sales of Elden Ring were the second highest for any tracked title released in the past 12 months, trailing only Call of Duty Vanguard, released in November 2021. We still didn't get the sales figures for Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7, which is a little bit concerning, as we regularly get sales numbers for PlayStation first-party games 3 days or a week after its release. So, I hope we get those numbers soon. The final topic is I am going to share the news that Moss Book 2 got a release date, and it is arriving soon. In 2018, developer Polyarc released one of PlayStation VR's best exclusives, Moss. The virtual reality adventure game put players in the task of a book reader experiencing the story of Quill, a young mouse. The completion of Quill's quest in Moss was just the first chapter of the first in a series of books, however, as Polyarc is now hard at work on Moss Book 2. Development of the sequel has now progressed far enough that Polyarc is comfortable confirming a release date for Moss Book 2. Moss Book 2 will be launching on PSVR sooner than many may have expected. Polyarc will be releasing the sequel on March 31st, less than 2 weeks from now. Much like the first game, it appears that Moss Book 2 will be exclusively available via PSVR at launch. Coinciding with the release date announcement, Polyarc also released a lengthy gameplay deep dive as part of PlayStation Underground. The gameplay video, as well as a blog post from Polyarc, explained that Moss Book 2 will pick up immediately after the end of the first game. The video starts in the gardens of the castle where Moss ended, but it's already some few chapters into the game itself. As such, Quill has new abilities previously unseen. These new nature attunement abilities will allow the player to help Quill as they explore and adventure through Moss Book 2. For example, the player can paint vine bridges and climbing walls to gain access to previously unreachable areas. With the new features, Quill will have much more platforming depth than prior. Moss Book 2 will also have plenty of combat too. Polyarc promises that there will be many new enemy types to be found within the sequel, including a rolling bug-like enemy named the Ripper. Players will be able to interact with the Ripper by grabbing them in-game and rolling them around to create a more dynamic VR experience. There's much more for players to discover in Moss Book 2 on their own. Polyarc says that Moss Book 2 will be filled with more interaction, more challenges, and more emotion. Considering how impressive Moss's first book was, it'll be exciting to see what Polyarc has managed with the sequel. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. In my next video, I will give an in-depth breakdown of the Hogwarts Legacy state of play, so stay tuned. Comment your thoughts on the topics and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then from SMPV, it's goodbye.